Hi, welcome everyone to our webinar today.
Hey, my name is Cameron Shaman. Hope you guys know me from around the Sitecore community. I've been working with Sitecore for over 15 years now, coming up to 16 years, I think. I'm a 12-time Sitecore MVP, and I've been fairly active in the community over the past decade, especially, and I've spoken at a number of user groups and conferences as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Akshay Sura. I've been doing Sitecore for quite a bit of time. Been an MVP a few times, as well as if you're using Sitecore Slack or are part of Sitecore Hackathon, that's something I run. Hope to share our knowledge about XM Cloud today. A little bit about Konobos. As I mentioned, I think when Cameron and I first got started, our whole focus was community first. Sharing knowledge is in our DNA, so we love sharing knowledge. Don't like knowledge silos, as well as bringing people together and being part of the community is one of our biggest things that we cherish here at Konobos, as well as with Cameron and I.
So today we're going to be talking about Sitecore XM Cloud. And it was, when we were planning this session, we got talking and we realized that it's been almost 3 years that Sitecore XM Cloud has been released publicly, especially. Obviously, there's a lot of planning in the background from Sitecore's perspective, a lot of beta testing and a lot of feedback that they gathered before they even launched this product. We've been working in the headless space for longer than that, for almost 6 years now. And originally it was the Jamstack movement, right? It was this new concept, this new architectural movement, which then got recoined to the term composable. And we were talking about all the innovations that have happened in Sitecore in that time. So we thought this would be a good time to catch up and see where we're at. We presented on Sitecore's composable future back in SubCon Budapest, right? I think it was 2022, and we were talking about what it means to what this composable approach means, what this Jamstack approach means, and what this new tech stack is going to look like for Sitecore, and why it's going to be such a big thing.
Yeah, it was, I think, just the start of the XM Cloud and testing all of that. So what exactly is Sitecore XM Cloud? So those of you who have not had the chance to look at it or be part of the conversation, XM Cloud is a cloud native headless CMS. It's built for enterprises, so it's scalable, it's composable, it's SaaS based, so everything's taken care of by Sitecore. It's nothing you have to worry about in terms of infrastructure, and then it includes quite a bit of other integrations into the other Sitecore products. So you could personalize, you could integrate with CDP, search, and it obviously integrates with all the other Sitecore products. But one thing Camrose reminded me yesterday is when XM Cloud 3 years ago was the center of the universe with everything around it. Now you can kind of see the two distinct content management system. So one is XM Cloud, which is SaaS based. The other one, which is still XP, still a great product for whichever use cases apply to it. But managed hosts are self-hosted. But then all of the other products which Sitecore offers work well with either of those, and there's integrations into both those content management systems. So XM Cloud, has improved quite a bit in the last 3 years.
Yep. So what is XM Cloud for those of you that don't know? It is a brand new offering from Sitecore. Obviously, not brand new anymore, but it was their headless first SaaS-based content management system. It guaranteed lightning fast performance using delivery from the edge, which made it vastly scalable, global scale and global flexibility. And you're not having to manage all of the infrastructure for that scale out either. because it was headless, you could use the technology that whichever technology you wish to use for your front-end delivery. The one of flavor, of course, is Next.js, but you could have also used Angular and Vue, and they used to have, and they still do have starter kits for those. And .NET Core, of course, is another one for those of you who have been moving along the Sitecore path in the past, and that is again also being updated, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Because it is cloud first, you don't have to deal with the upgrades. It's much simpler for marketers and developers alike due to a lot of the advancements in the technology that they've been using and the rebuild of a lot of the interfaces, especially.
Yep. And then talking about sites, so when you think about enterprise CMSs, you always think about multi-site, multilingual. You can absolutely do that. So you could have a multi-site with multiple languages. The interface provides you the ability to provision those out, easily manage these sites and keep them separate, keep them together. You work with each other, but you still get all of the capabilities of the enterprise management system for sure.
Yeah, and I do like this new sites interface that they have. I know in the Sitecore world, we've been used to running multi-site instances, but this does allow you to quickly spin up and duplicate existing sites, microsites, campaign sites, and edit those to launch a brand new initiative. Along with that, of course, is a brand new visual editor. And again, we were discussing this yesterday, right? Again, actually, and over the past few months. When we talked about XM Cloud 3 years ago, we applauded the fact that they had a lot of these features built in that a lot of other headless systems didn't, right? So the visual editing, the inbuilt capabilities around personalization, some of the integrated nature of the technology stack that they were bringing. And we were, compared to a lot of the other headless systems, which were just talking purely about content and not about any of the visual aspects of how that content was being applied. It does matter. We are very visual creatures. Marketers and content authors are also very visual. They like to see what's going to end up, what their content is going to end up looking like. And Sitecore had the Pages tool built on top of Experience Editor, which then became Horizon, which then obviously became Pages. 3 years on, we're at the point we are here where this is completely working. You can do everything in Pages. There were some aspects along the way, of course. It's a tool that was being built out, where you used to have to do some things in Experience Editor, but you couldn't quite do it in Pages, and you had to flip between a couple of different interfaces. But we're at the point now where Pages is completely a standalone application. It's fully SaaS. There's innovations coming to it all the time, and you don't have to do any upgrades. It's just there. And it's very slick, it's very fast, it's very, very modern, and it's what you'd expect for this kind of SaaS-based implementation of this day.
Yep. Along with that, the Explorer. So this is, in a way, looking at it as a content editor used to be back in the day. Again, it basically gives you another editing tool for you to manage content. Really, like you can edit specific content items. You can access, content items across all websites. You can edit or manage publishing with it, but just a different interface gives you an option over just using purely Pages. You could use the Explorer in order for you to do your work.
And this is the type of interface that most headless CMSs that you'd expect, that basic kind of interface.
Yeah.
But it's very, very useful for especially data-heavy entry, like that you might have some events or some products or some simple blog where you just want to enter some data. It's repetitive. You're not having to design pages, so to speak. Components was another new innovation from Sitecore. I don't think I've really seen this anywhere else, but this is a visual editor for creating the components themselves. So not for creating pages, but for actually designing the components which can then be reused throughout your site. It's really, really slick. You essentially end up with a canvas. You can go in, you can place, you can break up your canvas into multiple like rows and columns, and then you place in like labels and text boxes. What's really, really neat is that you can then tie those into external or internal or external data sources. So it could be data coming from Sitecore, but it could be data coming from something like Content Hub One, or even any other content delivery API, maybe from a different system, or maybe you have a PIM or a DAM or even a different CMS. And they're connected. You can have them personalized. They can in turn be personalized. So this is very, very neat, and a great innovation that's been perfected over the past few years.
Yeah. Your favorite?
And Sitecore Forms, yeah. My favorite, yeah. And we have talked about this a lot throughout the year. We did a big webinar on this when it was launched almost a year ago, right? And we'll post up some links in the chat shortly. But this is a modern forms builder. We know that the forms are important for data collection, for interaction points, and for other business needs. And this allows the business users to go and dynamically create the forms they need with the types of forms, the types of validation, adding conditional logic, for example. You can then send that data off to external systems, such as Workato or Sitecore Connect or any other iPaaS system. And they can then handle that data and push it into external systems and send emails, push it out to ordering systems, for example. But this gets now built into XM Cloud without you needing a third-party solution to it. And the forms will just render seamlessly. There's a built-in component for the rendering itself as well. And you also get some nice things like the analytics and reporting on how those forms are doing, what the submissions are looking like.
Yeah. The next piece, which is actually pretty important, is the embedded personalization. So by default, XM Cloud comes with a flavor of personalization. It gives you ability to personalize your components, your pages. Just want to make you aware that the version that comes with XM Cloud is basic. It's a subset of features of what you would get with actually the CDP or personalized, but you can definitely add on CDP and personalize on top of XM Cloud to bolster your personalization efforts, and it'll give you more capabilities. So, being able to see real time, being able to store data for more than 30 days, things like that, you would definitely get it. And hopefully, this matrix gives you a really good understanding of what you get with XM Cloud, but what do you get once you add CDP and personalize on top of it. And I think they work really, really well together if you add all of them on top of each other.
And then you obviously just mentioned the CDP, and with that, we would of course expect to see some in-depth analytics to go with that. So the neat thing is, as soon as you start using these things, they are very well integrated. These are separate systems. You get the basic CDP. You can go up to the next level CDP, as you mentioned. We saw that product matrix earlier in the presentation in the earlier slides. You can go to the full-fledged CDP, you can go to the full-fledged personalization tool, and it's seamless. It's just an add-on. You're not having to go and integrate those things yourself. But with those embedded analytics, you do see that within the Pages tool, within the Page Insights, the Site Insights as well, to see how those pages are performing, and you can then measure, adjust based on whatever campaigns you're running.
Yeah, for sure. And this one is an interesting one. So the first time we saw this, we had a long conversation about this because this was unique to Sitecore at that moment in time, a singular portal where you can log in once, you're authenticated, and you can jump between different products that you subscribe to. And I don't know if other providers provide this at this moment, but it is a cool concept, and it can even probably be awesome if you can integrate external providers as part of this. But having one jump point really, really helps. So Cloud Portal is a centralized platform where it streamlines all of the digital composable offerings Sitecore has. You cannot see them all in one place. Your editors or authors can jump between them. So, in terms of what benefits you get, it's unified access, right? You have one single place where all the products that you have access to are there. You can manage users roles, who has access to what, so security control is really good. um, and then audit logging, who logged in, what changes did they make, what did they do, definitely helps. So I really think this is a very unique offering that Sitecore does, is having one portal which is unifier for all of the products. So definitely want to mention that.
We've definitely seen that issue before where people have been used to single tools and then they've gone to the composable route, and now they have 5 different tools that they're having to log in and out of and try to integrate and trying to piece together. The single sign-on on this, the ability to integrate this with your internal Active Directory, for example, and then assign the roles and the permissions through your own Active Directory. Now that's something that's just been introduced recently. Is fantastic. I think it gives the enterprises the full control, and they're not having to separately think about onboarding and offboarding, for example, when you have new team members join. Deploy app. I think as we've been working in the Sitecore world, I think one of the big issues we've always had is deployments and automated deployments. It's I don't know how many times I've seen projects not have automated deployment pipelines, even to this day, which is just mind blowing to me, because it's one of the first things we like to do when we start on a project, because you can deploy once or twice, but it gets a little bit boring and time consuming after a little while. And when it gets boring, it becomes error prone because people aren't paying attention. So having this deploy built and baked right into the product is really, really great. You can just go in, configure the deployment endpoints where your code is being hosted, and Sitecore will just manage all the build and the deploy out to the various pieces, right? So you got any changes that you may have in the backend. We don't recommend it, right? But those backend services, as well as deployments out to Vercel, for example, or Netlify, or whatever your front end provider is. So again, all with single authentication, single pipeline, single view, single portal. So that end-to-end integration is really neat.
Yeah, no, I mean, as Cameron's mentioned, the deployment, the easier you make it, the better it is. So just being how closely it's attached to the source control, so GitHub or Azure DevOps repositories, and I know they have integrations into GitLab and things too, but just being that close to the code, how you can trigger a deploy, it goes into it. The hosting integration, at least the ones we work with, which is Vercel specifically, it really, really helps in terms of how well aligned both of them are. So you push a deployment out, it goes through pretty seamlessly through the CI/CD. Definitely helps. Multiple approaches, right? So you could use the deploy app, you could use the CLI, just giving you more flexibility in terms of what you can do definitely helps. And again, if you're using Vercel, you could look at feature deploys, and you could make it as complicated as you want or as easy as you want. But at the end of the day, it's what helps your organization work better. I'm a big fan of Vercel and Next.js, so this is in my wheelhouse, and I really, really like how the DevOps has been set up with the repository access, and things like that.
I'm a big fan of Netlify, so we'll balance that out.
And then the cookbook. Cameras, you want to take this one?
I think you've been looking into this quite a lot recently, right, Akshay?
Yeah. So this is interesting because I think the Accelerate recipes for XM Cloud is a very documented way. So basically, all it is it walks you through if you're doing a new XM Cloud project, if you're working on an existing uh, XPXM, how do you move it to XM Cloud? And it basically walks you through what you should be doing from a developer perspective, from an implementation perspective, from a user perspective. And it gives you guidance. And I think it's really helpful, especially if you haven't done many of these in the past. I kind of feel like it's a really good gauge of what you should be doing. For instance, Sprint Zero, what you should be doing, or which approach you should take. And Cameron's brought up this part where it's the front end first approach, which is interesting because all of the other SaaS-based products, other CMS or e-commerce systems, expect you to just connect to the SaaS endpoint to do your development. So all you're worried about is just your front end. You're not worried about running things locally. So, technically you could run Docker and then do all of your development. But if you just do front end first, you're just building your front end, connecting it to your dev instance in XM Cloud and getting your work done. So I feel like it's a really well documented way of doing things. How can you host? How can you set up DevOps? What considerations you should take? What should be in Sprint Zero? How do you integrate with other systems? Definitely would look at that. I'll post a link for the Accelerate recipe for XM Cloud in the chat during one of the slides Canvas is talking about, but it's super helpful for sure.
Yeah, I think that has been one of the big changes over the past 3 years, moving from that traditional development method where the past several years Cycles had moved to using Docker for development purposes, both for XMXP on-prem and local development, even out to deploying out into Kubernetes and things, for example. You don't have to worry about any of that here. They've moved to a front-end first development philosophy. So if you're working on this, they say just go up, spin up a cloud instance, and then have your developers just clone their normal front-end repository and just connect to that and work with that as they would any other SaaS-based product. I think we've been spoiled as Sitecore developers in the past because we've had a lot of flexibility within the platform, and Sitecore gave us that flexibility with the initial launches of XM Cloud, and we always knew that they would be scaling this back, and then they're now saying scale this back. Don't do any development on the CM, the Sitecore instance, because that's going to mess up some of your upgrade paths and things like that. So they've kind of scaled that back, put this recommendations in this cookbook. You can still do things like your custom templates and everything else, and then you connect with the CLI to that development environment, and that can then serialize those templates and renderings and layouts and everything else that we've been used to with Sitecore all this time. And then you check it into your source code, and then it goes through that deploy app, and it goes out to all the other environments. So there's nothing any different there. So you can still use Docker if you do have back-end work that needs to be done. But for the vast majority of your team, it's going to be much more quicker, much simpler, much faster for onboarding. And your front-end team is not going to be so confused about what they need to do with Docker and .NET. It's not something they really need to worry about. But I think more importantly, we have seen that there's a lot of enterprise customers who cannot run Docker, even if they wanted to, due to policies, firewall rules, security lockdowns, etc. And you waste a lot of time trying to debug these things, only for security to come back and say, nope, we can't disable that rule. That's our policy. So this, I think, gets everybody moving and on working on Sitecore XM Cloud extremely quickly, extremely fast, and you can see results very, very quickly.
Ooh, question on everyone's mind. So this is again a couple of the things I mentioned in the recipes as well on the documentation side. But one of the biggest things is, how do we get from XMXP to Sitecore XM Cloud? And there's a lot of well-documented ways of doing it. For sure, one of the things is you need to be in the most updated version of XM or XP before migrating. Will help quite a bit. And it also depends on case to case, right? So if you are already using XMXP JSS with Sitecore Edge, Experience Edge, life is a little bit easier. If you're not, then it's the path going to that, like how you walk through it in terms of either you do everything at once or you do some websites, move some websites, then get to the other ones. You have to think about all the customizations as Cameras has talked about. So traditionally in XP or XM, we're used to customizing pipelines. We're used to customizing the way the UI goes, the way we index things, the way pretty much everything can be customized. And that becomes a problem in a pure SaaS mode because you don't want to push those customizations as part of the core install, because then your upgrades will be painful. You don't want that. So most of those have to be architected in a way that you want to move away from customization on the instance, as opposed to maybe using webhooks or moving them to external systems which do the work for you. So this is really interesting to kind of take a look at it from a different approach. And every case is unique because every instance is built in a unique way specific to the customer or the needs. So it takes a little bit of time to plan out, but a good point to make is these are documented. They are on Sitecore's website. It does give you some guidance.
Yeah. And the advantage, of course, going from XMXP is you can still reuse a lot of your templates, a lot of your content. The migration path is simpler than having to remap everything across. But of course, it's always a good time to have a bit of a cleanup as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's been a lot of updates, a lot of changes, a lot of innovation being brought to XM Cloud over the past 3 years. I think we've seen a lot of nice integrations. I don't want to say tight integrations because that's not what we do in the composable and the decoupled world. But those products stay standalone, but they're nicely integrated within the same ecosystem. So you're not having to take an XM Cloud and figure out how to integrate a personalization tool or a CDP tool in that. Sitecore has done that for you. You just add on and you just build up. They built those connectors and those integrations for you. But if you want to just use personalization on its own, or just CDP on its own, or just Sand, or whatever whichever ones of those products, you can use them as standalone products. But within the ecosystem, it does make them a lot more powerful. So for the future, we did have a presentation after Symposium with a lot of the announcements that Sitecore had made there. And of course, the big thing on everybody's lips is AI. Even this week, of course, we've got the big news with DeepSeek, the cheaper alternative AI models that's been released. So this is a world we're in now. Everything's going to be driving towards AI, and Sitecore announced a lot of news around AI. It's going to be integrated into their entire product suite, as you would imagine. Within the content realm, of course, generative AI is the big thing that really kicked off this revolution at this moment in time. And with all the content within your own repositories, of course, what you're going to want to do is have your custom LLM, your custom large language model, which speaks the way that you speak. So Sitecore Stream will be looking at all the data that you have, all the content that you have, so that when you are asking it to generate some content for a new marketing campaign and you launch, it can write in the same tone and the same voice, in the same style as the rest of your products and the rest of your content. It's not going to be some very generic response that it's giving and very generic, obvious ChatGPT-like responses that it's going to be producing. As well as that, they're going to be integrating it you can have it integrated into things like brand awareness, so that when you've written a piece of content, it can then put it through AI enhanced workflow to say, does this meet our brand guidelines? is the imagery that you're using in this landing page match what our brand guidelines are, and does it fit in with the rest of our site? Couple that in and take that in deeper into things like search, so you can then run brand aware, context aware search and return results based on what you've already been browsing, what you've already been looking for example. It can really bring really relevant search results in. Or if it's a commerce site, then it can bring in products related to things that you've already bought, for example. With the personalization, right? It can really personalize based on what you have actually looked at. It can, and on the other end of that, it can actually suggest to the content authors and the marketing teams new segments that they could potentially target and how they could be slicing and dicing their audience better, for example. So there's a lot of possibilities here, and especially when you own this data. It's not generic data, it's very custom and looking at the data that you already have and you've already collected. I did see a post by the Salesforce CEO, Mark Benioff, yesterday saying we've just seen DeepSeek being launched for $6 million is what the training cost of this was. AI is here to stay, but the commodity now comes from not the AI engine and the LLMs behind it, because they're becoming cheaper and cheaper, but the data. Right? The data is king again, right? So before content is king, data is king again. And so a lot of these AI agents, especially the AI agents, are going to be acting on data, things you've done and things you potentially could be doing, and personalizing and generating based on that.
Yep, makes sense. Looking forward to that one. This was another one too at the symposium, cameras, about the HIPAA compliance. So just from a HIPAA compliance perspective, all the rules and regulations of how the data must be stored at rest and in transit, I'm assuming all of those were taken care of. So now if you have a HIPAA compliant customer or a solution, you can definitely use Sitecore for it.
Yeah, and across the product suite as well. And that's the important piece.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Marketplace. This is an interesting one. Our last topic. Marketplace it used to be the old modules that was written by developers and things like that. They're all available in GitHub or NuGet and things of that sort. This is a little bit more of a polished version of it, hoping that it'll have pre-built applications and connectors, things that Sitecore builds, as well as things that partners and other vendors create in order to create integrations or just ability to do things, right? And this is something which is supposed to be launched soon with a whole host of existing marketplace apps and plugins. So I'm kind of excited for this one. I had a recent conversation which got me really excited about partner contributions, and we're trying to see if there's a way for us to contribute towards the App Store to help customers and solutions. So super excited. Can't wait to see this.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that old marketplace kind of got a little bit abandoned and ghost towny like, right? So people would upload modules and things, and then they just wouldn't be supported going, because people have moved on, for example, or don't have time or whatever that may be. And you'd have some really great modules there that just weren't supported in the later versions of Sitecore. So with this, Sitecore will be, managing this entire ecosystem. So, and obviously it's into XM Cloud. So as updates and things are going to be made, I'm guessing Sitecore will be following up to make sure that all those integrations continue to work as well.
Cool. And now questions. I know we had a couple of questions. Thanks, Diego. I think Natasha had a question. We don't need to buy Sitecore Forms separately, and it's integrated in XM Cloud by default.
Correct. Yeah, it's out of the box. There's no additional licenses, and you can, if you have an XM Cloud instance, you can use that straight away.
Yeah, which is which is a good. I am not seeing any other questions. So if you guys have questions even after this, if you're rewatching this or watching this at another time, just post it in the comments and we will be sure to jump back in and answer any questions that you have. You can always reach us. Cameras and I are in pretty much all the socials as well as on Sitecore Slack. Um, and yeah, we're here to help you whichever way we can. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good rest of your day.